your darkest desires a reality.
So I think this movie is trying to be a take on the Hellraiser franchise, or at least influenced by it somehow. We are talking Lord of Wolves, written and directed by Charlie Steeds. Now, I've actually quite enjoyed many of Charlie Steeds' movies, and I think I've reviewed nearly all of them on the channel. And he's a British filmmaker who makes kind of lower budget indie horror movies, science fiction movies and things. Generally speaking, adds a little something extra to a lot of his films. I feel it somewhat lacks in other low budget British horror movie fare. So here we have his latest movie, and Lord of Wolves, when you're looking at it, you're going to think it's kind of like a werewolf movie. I would say it really isn't, and as I say, I think it's more like Hellraiser in a way. It's a hard film to describe the plot, because I find the plot, I'll be honest with you, somewhat convoluted, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But broadly speaking, it focuses on three people, all these three people are disenfranchised, they feel victimised, they are down on their luck, they feel segregated from society, and that's the kind of the theme that kind of binds them. We've got a guy who is a photographer who is mugged. He's living with this kind of older guy as a kind of like a housemate. This older guy dies and leaves in a strange artifact. We've got this guy who's very kind of popular on the hedonistic gay scene, and because of this he's estranged from his parents and his sister, who's kind of like the last person he really has any real connection with, and she's struggling to have her own issues dealing with a kind of drug dealer boyfriend. And then we have this woman who is somewhat of a timid housewife, and her husband isn't necessarily abusive but certainly overbearing. And she has been raped by a co-worker and has actually got pregnant through the rape, but is kind of afraid to tell the husband, really. And all three of them come in contact with this cabal of bestial people, I guess you would say. Obviously the title mentions the word wolf, but I would say they look more like hyenas. And they are seemingly some type of cult that prey on people who are feeling down, disenfranchised, you know, buried under the kind of the weight of society, whatever, and offers them, you know, a solution, but the solution isn't always all that productive, you might say. There is a drug involved that may or may not be the blood of these wolf-like creatures. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So as I say, Hellraiser-ish. You know, we have this kind of artifact that's kind of somehow connected to these demonic type creatures that appear and disappear and seemingly have supernatural powers, but it's their influence on people who are feeling vulnerable, which is the real danger here. So it's not exactly a Hellraiser remake or anything like that, but I feel that there is a certainly an influence by the very least. I mean, it's somewhat of a ambitious storyline, certainly. Far less than I would say the lot of the other movies that Charlie Steeds has made, which are more or less A to B kind of plots in regards to, you know, there's a creature and it's attacking innocent people or whatever it might be. This is much more trying to be dramatic with multiple story threads, no real clear idea about what the actual kind of outcome is going to be, things like that. So it's a much more experimental film, I suppose, in some ways. So it's certainly ambitious, certainly has an originality to it that I would say makes the story, at least it's somewhat kind of intriguing. I have to say, I think the soundtrack's actually fairly strong on this one. It kind of adds to this kind of London itself as a kind of character in the movie. I think the performances are mixed, but there are some strong performances, to be honest. There are a couple of characters here who I did think did actually a fairly kind of strong performance, whilst I think others maybe less so, but there are some strong performances in this. And, you know, it's kind of a little different, really, to be honest. So if you're wanting something a little bit off the beaten track, a little bit originality, then you may want to check it out. But let's talk what doesn't work. Okay, so as much as this movie tries to be, you know, march to the beat of its own drum, I feel this story is way convoluted. I mean, a good hour into this movie, I'm thinking, I have no idea what this movie is actually about. It's got something to do with wolf people, but it's like, it's really, I have to say, directionless. At least until you get to the second half of the third act, really, when it all starts to come together. But I have to say, I mean, it's just a sprawling story with so many different characters involved that you feel, what is actually going on? On top of that, when we see our, air quotes, supernatural stuff, you're not sure if it's meant to be like a hallucination, if it's meant to be like some type of metaphor, or if it's actually kind of happening to these kind of characters. The movie's very unclear about what's kind of going on to these kind of people. Is it real? Is it in their heads? Is it a metaphor for some type of depression or mental, you know, kind of illness or something? It's a very convoluted movie in regards to its plot. There's maybe too many characters here. So, you know, you don't really get a kind of a good feel for some of these characters, certainly. I think even if you look at the blurb, it makes it sound like this photographer's guy is the main guy. He really isn't. It's the brother and sister that are the kind of the main characters, really, I would say. But you never really feel the movie focuses on any one particular kind of story thread. And even within the story threads, like we take this, the brother who is this like gay guy who's all about kind of going out and getting drunk and hooking up and all that. And then he has this kind of fractured relationship with his parents, but then he has this relationship with his sister, which is on the way to becoming fractured, and then she's got this kind of relationship with this kind of like this drug dealer boyfriend, and he's off doing something else, and he's got involved with this cult. And it's like, my God, it's just like there's just a little bit too many kind of moving parts, and I just didn't feel the story was clear enough or strong enough to kind of carry all these parts. And then in kind of low budget sort of movie fashion, there's just some things here that are just sloppy. We have two of the characters meet for the first time. They're in their separate storylines and they kind of cross paths. And they both decide to go and check out a church, and then magically they've got torches and things. And it's just like, well, where did they come from? Things like that. So there's just little things here that just sort of like, if you're going to have an intelligent, cerebral movie which has got layers and stuff, I think you've got to try and be a bit smarter with it. But I didn't feel this movie was. It has like it's the veneer of being a higher brow artistic movie, but still has a lot of B-movie trappings, and these things don't kind of, I didn't really feel meshed particularly well. The story just takes too long to really focus. It's just like you're watching these these plots that are just going all over the place, and you never really feel like it ties together until maybe right at the end, in which case I suspect some people would have checked out. As I've mentioned, I think some of the acting is strong, but there are some performances that I do feel are on the weak side. The actual kind of creatures themselves are very ill-defined about what's actually kind of going on. And I have to say, even the way they are presented to us, it doesn't look good. They're just kind of rubber masks with mouths that are constantly kind of open and they're like hanging around like this all day. And it's like, it's like, okay, when they're snarling and stuff, it makes sense. But when they're just like chilling out in the background or whatever, they've kind of got this one expression. Again, it's because it's just a rubber mask. It's a budgetary reason, but it just looks like a guy in a mask. And again, it's just like, it's just really like unclear about what they're actually supposed to be. Are they real? Are they figments? Are they just some shared hallucinogenic? Are they something to do with the kind of the drugs that these people are taking? You know, it's not really exactly clear about what's going on, and therefore becomes a little frustrating. So I think this movie has ambition, and I think it could have been an interesting story, but this is definitely a film I feel needed to have a rewrite. This needed to have someone else involved to kind of like make this story more palatable. As it stands at the moment, I have to be honest with you, I think this is one of Charlie Steed's weaker movies. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 10. I didn't think it was particularly captivating. It wasn't a strong movie, if you ask me. Which I'm sad to say, because I do kind of quite like Charlie Steed's work overall. But, you know, I've got to call it like I see it. So it's a 3 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? Would you see it? Please do let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.